The training hall of the Valiant Dawn stretched wide and tall, with metal walls that gleamed under bright lights. Today, like every other day, dozens of cadets filled the space with the sounds of combat. Fists hit training pads, bodies thudded against mats. Instructors shouted corrections and encouragement. But this was not an ordinary human military vessel. This was a coalition training ship, and the cadets came from 8 different species across the galaxy. Lisa Monroe wiped sweat from her forehead and adjusted her training uniform. She was 23 years old, with brown hair tied back in a tight bun, and green eyes that missed nothing. She stood at average height for a human woman, which made her small compared to most of the aliens training around her. For the past 6 months, she had been proving herself worthy of her place in the Coalition Defense Forces. It had not been easy. Across the mat, her current sparring partner stretched his long arms and cracked his neck. Velkir was a Draxian, a species that looked like a cross between a human and a reptile. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, with scaled skin the color of bronze and eyes that had no white in them, just solid amber orbs that seemed to glow. His people were known throughout the galaxy as warriors. They had conquered 12 planets before joining the Coalition, and they never let anyone forget it. Sergeant Jake Williams, the human combat instructor, walked between the sparring pairs with his hands behind his back. He was a veteran of 20 years, with gray streaks in his dark hair and scars that told stories he rarely shared. He stopped at the edge of Lisa's mat and nodded to both fighters. "Standard grappling rules," Jake said in a voice that carried across the noise. "No strikes. No killing techniques. First person to pin their opponent for 3 seconds wins. Understand?" Lisa nodded. Velkir made a gesture with his clawed hand that meant agreement in Draxian culture. Around them, other pairs had already begun their matches. A human cadet struggled against a 4-armed Tellian. 2 insectoid Kresh clicked and chirped as they tested each other's balance. The diversity of the Coalition was on full display. "Begin," Jake said, and stepped back. Lisa moved forward carefully, keeping her weight centered and her hands ready. She had studied Draxian fighting styles for weeks, watching videos and reading reports. They were aggressive fighters who relied on strength and speed. They liked to end fights quickly with overwhelming force. The key to beating them was patience and technique. Velkir did not share her cautious approach. He lunged forward with confidence that bordered on arrogance. His long arms reached for her shoulders, trying to use his size advantage to simply overpower her. Lisa stepped to the side and let his momentum carry him past her. She reached for his extended arm, but he was faster than she expected. He spun and caught her wrist. For a moment, they were locked together, each testing the other's strength. Lisa could feel the power in Velkir's grip. He was stronger than her, much stronger. If this became a contest of pure force, she would lose. But combat was never about strength alone. It was about leverage, timing, and the will to do what your opponent did not expect. Velkir pulled her forward, trying to off-balance her. Lisa went with the pull instead of resisting it, dropping her weight and sliding past his hip. She hooked her leg behind his and pushed at his chest. The Draxian stumbled but did not fall. He was too well trained for such a basic technique. They separated and circled each other. Lisa could see irritation growing in Velkir's amber eyes. He had expected an easy victory. Most of the alien cadets did when they first faced human opponents. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the fastest. Their senses were not the sharpest. To many aliens, humans seemed unremarkable, admitted to the Coalition more for their diplomatic skills and technological innovations than their combat abilities. Velkir attacked again, this time with more aggression. He feinted high and grabbed low, trying to catch Lisa's legs. She sprawled backward, keeping her weight away from his grasping hands. For 30 seconds they grappled, neither able to gain a decisive advantage. Lisa felt her muscles burning with effort. Velkir's breathing was growing heavier, but his strength had not faded. Then Velkir made his mistake. As Lisa shifted her position, her hair came loose from its bun. A few strands fell across her face. In that moment, Velkir saw what he thought was an opportunity. In Draxian combat, any part of the body was a valid target. Hair was simply another handle to control an opponent. He reached out and grabbed a fistful of Lisa's brown hair, yanking her head backward. Pain shot through Lisa's scalp, but more than pain, she felt fury. In human culture, especially in human military culture, such an action crossed a line. It was not just disrespectful. It was degrading. It said that Velkir did not see her as a real opponent. just as something to be manhandled and dominated. The other human cadets nearby stopped their own training to watch. They recognized what had just happened. Sergeant Jake took a step forward, his hand rising to call a halt to the match. But Lisa was already moving. She did not try to pull away from Velkir's grip. Instead, she moved toward him, closing the distance he thought he had created. Her hands came up not to defend but to attack. She grabbed the arm that held her hair and controlled it, turning her body to redirect the force he was applying. At the same time, her leg swept behind his knee with precise timing. Velkir had been pulling backward, using Lisa's hair to control her position. When she suddenly moved forward instead of resisting, his own strength became his weakness. His balance shifted. His knee buckled. Lisa's technique was not fancy or flashy. It was simple, direct, and devastating. She used his momentum and his grip on her hair against him, turning his advantage into his downfall. The Draxian warrior crashed to the mat with a sound that echoed through the training hall. Before he could recover, Lisa had transitioned to a control position, her weight distributed perfectly to pin his larger body. She still controlled the arm that had grabbed her hair, hyperextending it just enough to cause discomfort without injury. Her other hand pressed against his throat, not choking but making it clear that she could if she chose to. 3 seconds, Lisa said quietly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes blazed with intensity. Velkir struggled beneath her, trying to use his superior strength to throw her off. But technique trumped strength. Every movement he made only made Lisa's position more secure. His training told him a dozen ways to escape such a hold, but none of them worked. This human, this small female from a species he had dismissed as weak, had completely and utterly dominated him. 1, Sergeant Jake counted. Velkir's struggles became more desperate. His pride could not accept this defeat. Warriors of the Draxian Empire did not lose to humans. They were the conquerors. They were the strong. 2. Around the training hall, all combat had stopped. Every cadet, human and alien alike, watched the scene on Lisa's mat. The alien cadets could not believe what they were seeing. The human cadets stood with crossed arms and satisfied expressions. 3. Match to Monroe. Lisa immediately released her holds and stood up. She offered her hand to help Velkir to his feet, as was proper protocol after a training match. The Draxian stared at her hand for a long moment. His amber eyes were wide with shock and something else. Confusion, perhaps. Or fear. Velkir did not take the offered hand. He rolled to his side and pushed himself to his feet, ignoring Lisa completely. He looked at Sergeant Jake, then at the other alien cadets watching him. His scaled face showed no expression that a human could read, but his body language spoke volumes. He was humiliated. Without a word, Velkir walked off the mat and headed toward the exit. His fellow Draxian cadets parted to let him pass, their reptilian faces unreadable but their body language showing uncertainty. One of the strongest warriors of their species had just been defeated by a human female half his size. Their understanding of the galaxy had just been challenged. Back to training, Sergeant Jake called out, and the hall slowly returned to its normal chaos of combat practice. But the energy had changed. The alien cadets looked at their human training partners with new eyes. The humans carried themselves with a bit more confidence. Lisa pulled her hair back and retied it in a tight bun. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but she kept her face calm. She knew that what had just happened would have consequences, in a place where dozens of species trained together, where old rivalries and cultural misunderstandings simmered beneath a surface of diplomatic cooperation. A single incident could ripple outward in unexpected ways. Sergeant Jake walked over to her. Medical bay, Monroe. Get checked out. I'm fine, Sergeant, Lisa said. That's an order. You took some hits before you ended it. Get checked out. Jake's voice was stern, but his eyes showed approval. Good technique. Clean finish. As Lisa walked toward the exit, she passed a group of Tellian cadets. They watched her with their 4 eyes, 2 on each side of their heads. One of them made a gesture that she had learned meant respect in their culture. She nodded back and continued on her way. She did not know it yet, but in pulling her hair, Velkir had started something that would change the entire coalition's understanding of humanity. He had thought he was simply taking an advantage in a training match. Instead, he had pulled on a thread that would unravel assumptions. News traveled fast aboard the Valiant Dawn. By the time Lisa left the medical bay with a clean bill of health, every cadet on the ship seemed to know what had happened in the training hall. She walked through the corridors and felt eyes following her. Some looked at her with respect, others with curiosity, a few with something that might have been fear. The medical officer had been human, a doctor named Kelly Price with kind eyes and efficient hands. She had checked Lisa for bruises and strained muscles, found a few minor injuries, and cleared her for duty. As Lisa was leaving, Kelly had squeezed her shoulder and said quietly, "You made us proud today." It was a small gesture, but it meant something in a place where humans were still proving they belonged. Lisa made her way to the human quarters section of the ship. The Valiant Dawn was designed to accommodate multiple species, so different sections had different environmental controls and living arrangements. The human section felt comfortable and familiar, with standard gravity and temperature that did not require any adjustment. She nodded to a few fellow human cadets as she passed them in the hallway. They grinned at her like she had won some great victory. Her shared quarters were small but functional. 2 bunks, 2 lockers, 2 desks. Her roommate was another human cadet named Amy Torres, who worked in the engineering section. Amy was sitting on her bunk when Lisa entered, and she jumped up with a huge smile. "Is it true?" Amy asked immediately. "Did you really take down Valkyr in under a minute?" 2 minutes, Lisa corrected, dropping onto her own bunk. "And it was a standard training match, nothing special." "Nothing special?" "Lisa, Valkyr is the top Draxian fighter in our training group. He's beaten every single alien opponent he's faced, and you just made him look like a beginner." Amy sat down across from her, eyes bright with excitement. "Everyone is talking about it. The aliens can't believe what happened." Lisa closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. This was exactly what she had been afraid of. Making a scene. Drawing attention. She had just wanted to train, learn, and earn her place in the Coalition Defense Forces. She had not wanted to become some kind of symbol. "He pulled my hair," Lisa said quietly. Amy's expression changed immediately. The excitement faded and was replaced with understanding. Oh no, he didn't. He did. Grabbed it and yanked like I was some kind of animal." Lisa opened her eyes and looked at her roommate. "What was I supposed to do?" "Exactly what you did," Amy said firmly. "You defended yourself and you won. If the aliens don't understand why that's a problem, they need to learn." Before Lisa could respond, there was a knock at the door. Amy got up and opened it to reveal Sergeant Jake Williams standing in the hallway. He looked tired, like he had been dealing with problems since the training session ended. "Monroe, you're wanted in the commander's office. Now." Lisa stood up and straightened her uniform. "Yes, Sergeant." She followed Jake through the corridors, noting that he seemed tense. Usually the sergeant was calm and controlled, but today his jaw was tight and his steps were quick. They took a lift up 3 levels to the command section of the ship. This area was quieter, more formal. Officers and senior staff moved with purpose between offices and briefing rooms. Commander Seth Harris had an office with a window that looked out at the stars. He was standing by that window when Lisa and Jake entered, his hands clasped behind his back. Seth was 45 years old, with the bearing of a man who had spent his entire adult life in military service. His uniform was immaculate, his posture perfect. "Cadet Monroe," he said without turning around. "Do you know why you're here?" "I assume it's about the incident in training, sir?" "The incident," Seth repeated and finally turned to face her. His expression was neutral, giving nothing away. "Is that what you're calling it?" "Sir, I was following training protocols," Lisa said carefully. "Sergeant Williams set the rules. I won the match according to those rules. I'm not questioning your actions, Cadet. I'm questioning the consequences." Seth moved to his desk and tapped a control panel. A holographic display appeared, showing what looked like a formal communication. "This is a request from the Draxian training supervisor. They want a full investigation into what happened today. They're claiming you used an illegal technique." Lisa felt anger flash through her, but she kept her voice steady. "Sir, I used a standard hip throw combined with an arm control. It's basic grappling. We teach it to every cadet, I know that. Sergeant Williams knows that. The problem is that Valkyr's people don't seem to want to accept it." Seth dismissed the holographic display and looked directly at Lisa. "You need to understand something about the Draxians. They are a warrior culture. Honor and strength define their entire society. When Valkyr lost to you today, he didn't just lose a training match. He lost face in front of his peers and his superiors." "With respect, sir, that's not my problem," Lisa said. "He grabbed my hair. He disrespected me first." Sergeant Jake spoke up for the first time. "The Draxians don't see it that way. In their culture, Using any available advantage in combat is acceptable. Hair is just another body part to control. They don't understand why humans react so strongly to it. Then maybe they need to learn, Lisa said, her voice harder now. We're supposed to be equals in the coalition. That means they need to respect our culture just like we respect theirs. Commander Seth was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then he nodded slowly. I agree with you, Cadet. But the situation is complicated. We have 7 other species training on this ship, and most of them are watching to see how we handle this. If we appear weak or apologetic, it will confirm their suspicions that humans don't belong in the coalition military. If we appear too aggressive, it will confirm their suspicions that humans are dangerous and unpredictable. So what do we do, sir? Lisa asked. For now, you continue your regular training schedule. Sergeant Williams will be meeting with the other combat instructors to discuss cultural sensitivity training, and I will be having some very careful conversations with the alien supervisors. Seth's expression softened slightly. What you did today was not wrong, Monroe. You defended yourself and you won fairly, but you need to understand that your actions have implications beyond just one training match. I understand, sir. Dismissed. Lisa saluted and left the office with Jake following behind her. They walked in silence until they were back in the lift heading down to the cadet levels. Then Jake sighed and shook his head. You really got yourself into something, kid, he said, his voice almost amused now that they were away from the commander. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Sergeant. I know, but trouble found you anyway. The lift stopped and the doors opened. Jake stepped out, then turned back to look at her. Between you and me, what you did today was perfect. Clean technique, good control, professional finish. I couldn't have done it better myself. But perfect technique doesn't always lead to simple outcomes. He walked away, leaving Lisa to think about his words. She made her way back to her quarters, hoping for some peace and quiet. But as she walked through the corridors, she noticed something strange. The alien cadets who had always ignored her or looked through her like she was invisible were now watching her with attention. Some moved out of her way in the hallway. Others stopped their conversations when she passed. Back in her quarters, Amy was gone, probably on shift in the engineering section. Lisa sat on her bunk and pulled up her personal datapad. She scrolled through the training records, looking at her performance scores and rankings. She was in the top 20% of her class, which was good but not exceptional. She had worked hard to get there, spending extra hours in the gym and studying combat theory in her free time. A message notification appeared on her screen. It was from an address she didn't recognize, using a coalition standard format. She opened it cautiously. The message was short and in basic English, translated from Draxian. You fight without honor. You use tricks and deception. A true warrior would face me with strength, not cowardice. You have shamed yourself and your species. It was from Velkir. Lisa stared at the message for a long moment. She could report it, of course. There were rules against cadets harassing each other. But that would make everything worse. It would make her look weak, like she needed protection from words, and it would give Velkir exactly what he wanted, which was to get under her skin and make her react emotionally. She deleted the message without responding. Over the next few days, Lisa learned that the incident had caused more disruption than she had realized. In the dining hall, she noticed that the seating arrangements had changed. Before, the different species mixed freely, sitting together and sharing meals. Now there was a subtle separation. The Draxians sat together at one table, talking in low voices in their own language. The other alien species watched both the Draxians and the humans with careful eyes. During training sessions, the alien cadets were more cautious when paired with human opponents. They treated the humans with a kind of wary respect that had not been there before. Some of the humans seemed to enjoy this new dynamic. Others, like Lisa, found it uncomfortable. She had not wanted to create division. She had just wanted to defend herself. In one training session, Lisa was paired with a creche cadet, an insectoid. 3 days after the incident, Lisa was working through her morning routine in the human section's gym when Sergeant Jake found her. She was running on a treadmill, sweat soaking through her shirt, trying to clear her mind through physical exhaustion. The past 72 hours had been strange and uncomfortable. The investigation into her fight with Velkir was ongoing, and she had been told to avoid any contact with Draxian cadets until it was resolved. Monroe, stop the machine, Jake said, his face grim. Lisa slowed the treadmill to a stop and grabbed a towel. What's wrong, Sergeant? We have a situation. You need to come with me right now. They walked quickly through the corridors, heading toward the administrative section of the ship. Jake didn't explain what was happening, but his tension was obvious. When they reached Commander Seth's office, the door was already open. Inside, Lisa saw not just the commander, but also 3 Draxian officers she had never met before, including one who wore the rank insignia of a high commander in the Draxian military. And standing in the corner, looking both angry and satisfied, was Valkyr, Cadet Monroe, Commander Seth said, his voice carefully controlled. These officers are here to deliver a formal communication. Commander Draknor, please proceed. The Draxian High Commander stepped forward. He was even larger than Valkyr, with scales that had darkened to almost black with age and scars that covered his arms and neck. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried the weight of authority. His translator rendered his words in precise English. Cadet Lisa Monroe of Earth, you are hereby formally challenged to combat under Draxian honor protocols. Cadet Valkyr claims you achieved victory through deception and dishonorable techniques. He demands the right to face you again under proper conditions to restore his standing and prove the truth of his accusations. Lisa stared at the Draxian commander, trying to process what she was hearing. Sir, I don't understand. We already fought. I won according to the rules that were set. Human rules. Valkyr spoke for the first time, his voice bitter. Weak rules designed to protect the weak. A true test of warriors requires no artificial limits. Combat continues until one yields or cannot continue. That is the Draxian way. Commander Seth stepped between Lisa and the Draxians. This is highly irregular. Cadet Monroe is not subject to Draxian honor codes. She is a human officer in training, and she operates under coalition military law. Coalition law recognizes the right of challenge under cultural protocols, Commander Draknor said calmly. It is written in the founding documents. When a member of a warrior culture issues a formal challenge, and when that challenge relates to matters of honor, it cannot be refused without bringing shame to both parties and their species. That's a technicality meant for diplomatic situations, not training exercises between cadets, Sergeant Jake protested. Nevertheless, it is law. The Draxian commander turned his amber eyes back to Lisa. You have the right to refuse, cadet, but know that such refusal will be recorded. It will be known throughout the coalition that when challenged properly, when given the chance to prove your victory was not accident or luck, you chose to hide behind regulations instead of defending your honor. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. This was a trap. If she refused, the Draxians would forever claim that she had been afraid to face Valkyr in a real fight. They would use it as evidence that humans were weak, that they only succeeded through tricks and rules. But if she accepted, she would be fighting under Draxian conditions, where serious injury was not just possible but expected. What exactly are the terms of this challenge? She asked. Commander Draknor seemed pleased by the question. Single combat in a standard arena. No weapons, no time limits. Combat continues until one party yields verbally or is physically unable to continue. Medical staff will be present to prevent death, but injury is acceptable and expected. The fight will be witnessed by representatives from all coalition species currently stationed on this vessel, and full recordings will be added to the official training archives. When? Lisa asked. 3 days from now. That gives both fighters time to prepare. Commander Seth pulled Lisa aside, turning his back to the Draxians. He spoke in a low voice. You don't have to do this, cadet. I can find ways to delay this, maybe even get it canceled entirely. This is political maneuvering and they're using you as a pawn. If I refuse, it won't just affect me, Lisa said quietly. It'll affect every human in the coalition military. They'll say we talk tough but run when challenged. I can't let that happen. You could be seriously hurt. Draxian combat protocols allow for broken bones, torn ligaments, concussions. They train their entire lives for this kind of fighting. Lisa looked past the commander to where Valkyr stood with his superior officers. The Draxian cadet was watching her with those unblinking amber eyes. She could see the arrogance there, the certainty that he would win this time. He had been humiliated and now he wanted revenge. But more than that, he wanted to prove that human victory had been a fluke. I accept the challenge, Lisa said loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. Commander Draknor nodded with satisfaction. The terms are set. 3 days. We will arrange the venue and notify all required witnesses. The Draxian officers left, taking Valkyr with them. As soon as the door closed, Commander Seth turned to Lisa with a mixture of frustration and concern. "Do you understand what you just agreed to?" he asked. "I agreed to fight under Draxian rules. No time limits. Fight until someone yields or can't continue. You agreed to potentially get yourself crippled," Sergeant Jake said bluntly. "Velker has been training in Draxian combat arts since he was old enough to walk. He knows how to break bones efficiently. He knows how to make opponents suffer. And after what happened in the training hall, he's going to be motivated to make this as painful as possible." "Then I better prepare well," Lisa said. Over the next 3 days, Lisa's life became focused entirely on the upcoming fight. Sergeant Jake took personal charge of her training, putting her through brutal sessions that tested her endurance, technique, and pain tolerance. They studied every recording of Draxian combat they could find, analyzing patterns and weaknesses. "Their species evolved on a high-gravity world," Jake explained during one session. "They have incredible explosive power for their size, but sustained effort drains them faster than it drains us. In a prolonged fight, endurance becomes the equalizer. So I need to survive long enough for that advantage to matter," Lisa said, working through defensive drills. "Exactly. The first 5 minutes will be the most dangerous. Velkir will try to end it quickly with overwhelming aggression. If you can weather that storm, if you can make him work for every exchange, eventually his advantages will start to fade." Lisa trained until her muscles screamed and her mind felt numb from exhaustion. She fell into her bunk each night barely able to move, and woke up each morning to do it all again. Amy helped by researching Draxian physiology and culture, finding every scrap of information that might be useful. "Their joints bend slightly differently than ours," Amy explained one evening, showing Lisa diagrams on her data pad. "See here? Their elbows have a greater range of motion, but that also means certain angles put more stress on the connective tissue. If you can hyperextend the joint past this point, it causes significant pain without requiring as much strength." "You're telling me to fight dirty," Lisa said. "I'm telling you to fight smart. The Draxians respect strength, but they also respect cleverness. Using their own biology against them isn't cheating. It's strategy." Word of the challenge spread through the ship faster than any official announcement could have managed. Soon, everyone knew that Lisa Monroe would be fighting Velkir in 3 days under Draxian honor protocols. The reaction was mixed. Some humans were excited, treating it like some kind of championship match. Others were worried, understanding the real danger involved. The alien cadets watched the developments with intense interest. This was more than just a fight between two individuals. It was a test of humanity's place in the coalition military structure. If Lisa won, it would confirm that humans belonged alongside the traditional warrior species. If she lost, especially if she lost badly, it would reinforce the idea that humans were out of their depth in military matters. On the second day of preparation, Lisa received an unexpected visitor. She was in a private training room, working through forms and techniques when the door opened. She turned expecting to see Sergeant Jake, but instead found herself facing a Draxian she had never met before. He was old, even older than Commander Draknor, with scales that had faded to a pale gray and eyes that held centuries of experience. He walked with a slight limp, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than any Draxian she had heard before. "I am Sorkin," he said through his translator. "I teach meditation and mental discipline to Draxian cadets. I have come to speak with you about your upcoming fight." Lisa grabbed a towel and wiped her face, wary but curious. "Why would you help me? I'm fighting against one of your people. I am not here to help you win. I am here to help you understand." Sorkin moved slowly to a bench and sat down with visible relief. "Velkir is my student. I have trained him since he was young, and I know that what—" The morning of the fight, Lisa woke before the alarm sounded. Her body knew something important was coming, and sleep had become impossible. She lay in her bunk for a few minutes, listening to Amy's soft breathing from across the small room, and tried to calm the nervous energy building in her chest. When she finally got up and started her morning routine, Amy woke as well. Her roommate didn't say anything at first, just watched as Lisa went through her preparations with methodical precision. Finally, as Lisa was tying her hair back, Amy spoke. "You're going to win," she said with quiet confidence. "Maybe," Lisa replied, checking her reflection in the small mirror. "Or maybe I'm going to get my ass kicked in front of every species in the coalition." Either way, at least we'll know. Don't talk like that. You beat him once already. That was different. He was arrogant and careless. Sorkin warned me that this time will be harder. Lisa turned away from the mirror. But I'm ready. Or at least I'm as ready as I can be. She made her way to the dining hall, forcing herself to eat even though her stomach was tight with anticipation. The meal was quiet. A few human cadets came by to offer words of encouragement, but most people kept their distance, sensing that she needed space to prepare mentally for what was coming. Sergeant Jake found her there an hour before the scheduled fight. He looked like he hadn't slept well, dark circles under his eyes and his uniform not quite as crisp as usual. "Time to head to the arena," he said. "Medical team is already setting up. Commander Seth wants you there early for a final briefing." The arena was located in one of the ship's largest open spaces, a training facility that had been cleared of all equipment for this event. When Lisa entered, she was struck by how different it looked. Seating had been arranged in a circle around a central fighting area, marked with white lines on the floor. The lighting was bright and clinical. Medical equipment and staff were positioned at multiple stations around the perimeter, and everywhere, filling the seats in groups organized by species, were the witnesses. Humans sat together on one side. Draxians occupied another section, their bronze scales gleaming under the lights. The Tellians with their forearms, the insectoid Kresh, the aquatic Selkiri, and species Lisa barely recognized all had their designated areas. Everyone was here to watch. Commander Seth met her near the center of the arena. He was in full-dress uniform, as were several other senior officers from different species. This was being treated as an official event, complete with formal protocols and recorded documentation. "The rules have been agreed upon," Seth explained, his voice low so only Lisa could hear. "No weapons. No intentional killing techniques. Combat continues until verbal submission or inability to continue. The medical team has authority to stop the fight if they determine either participant is at risk of permanent injury or death." "Understood, sir." Velkir arrived 10 minutes ago. He's in the preparation area on the opposite side. Seth paused, choosing his words carefully. "Lisa, I need you to understand something. Winning this fight would be significant, but it's not the only measure of success. If you can show these species that humans are capable warriors who face challenges with courage and skill, that has value even if you don't achieve victory. With respect, sir, I'm planning to win." A slight smile crossed Seth's face. "That's the spirit. Now go get ready. You have 20 minutes. The preparation area was a small room with a bench, a water dispenser, and a medical kit. Lisa sat down and went through her pre-fight routine. She stretched carefully, testing each muscle group and joint. She reviewed the key techniques and strategies she had practiced with Sergeant Jake. She controlled her breathing and focused her mind. At some point, she heard the crowd noise outside change, growing louder and more energized. Velkir must have entered the arena. She could imagine him walking to the center, performing whatever ritual preparations Draxian warriors did before combat. She pushed the image away and focused on her own readiness. When the door opened, it was Sergeant Jake. "Time," was all he said. Lisa stood and walked with him out into the arena. The noise hit her immediately. A wall of sound from dozens of different species all watching and waiting. She kept her eyes forward, not looking at the crowd, focusing instead on the fighting area ahead. Velkir was already there, standing at the far edge of the marked circle. He wore minimal clothing, just shorts that allowed for maximum movement, revealing the powerful muscles beneath his bronze scales. His posture was different from their first fight. Before he had stood with casual arrogance. Now his stance was centered and alert, the position of a warrior who was taking this seriously. When their eyes met across the arena, Lisa saw no anger there. Instead, she saw focus and determination. This was not about revenge for Velkir. This was about proving something to himself and his people. An official stepped forward, a Tellian wearing ceremonial robes. He raised two of his four hands for silence, and the crowd noise faded. This combat is conducted under Draxian honor protocols, witnessed by representatives of all coalition species present on this vessel. The Tellian announced in a voice that carried across the arena. The fighters are Cadet Lisa Monroe of Earth and Cadet Velkir of Drax Prime. Combat continues until verbal submission or inability to continue. Medical intervention may occur if the risk of death or permanent injury is determined by authorized personnel. The Tellian looked at Lisa. Do you enter this combat of your own free will, understanding the risks involved? I do, Lisa said, her voice steady. He turned to Valkyr. Do you enter this combat of your own free will, understanding the risks involved? I do, Valkyr replied in his own language, his translator rendering it in English for the crowd. Then let the combat begin. The Tellian lowered his hands and stepped back quickly, clearing the fighting area. For a long moment, neither fighter moved. They stood at opposite edges of the circle, studying each other, measuring and evaluating. The crowd was silent, tension thick in the air. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Lisa moved first, but not to attack. She began to circle slowly, staying on the balls of her feet, keeping her weight centered. Valkyr mirrored her movement, circling in the opposite direction. They were feeling each other out, looking for tells and weaknesses. Then Valkyr attacked, but not with the wild aggression of their first fight. His approach was measured and controlled. He closed the distance with quick steps, his hands reaching for Lisa's upper body. She stepped back and to the side, avoiding the grab, but Valkyr was already adjusting. His follow-up came immediately, cutting off her angle of escape. They engaged, hands meeting hands, testing grips and pressure points. Lisa felt the strength in Valkyr's arms and knew she couldn't match it directly. She shifted her weight and broke the contact, creating space between them again. The pattern repeated several times. Valkyr would attack with controlled aggression. Lisa would defend, evade, and reset. She was not trying to win these exchanges. She was learning. Every contact gave her information about how Valkyr moved, how he thought, where his habits and preferences lay. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The crowd began to murmur. This was not the explosive combat they had expected. This was a chess match played with bodies, each fighter probing for openings while protecting against counters. Valkyr began to show signs of frustration. He had trained for this, prepared for this, but Lisa was not giving him the fight he expected. She was not trying to meet his strength with strength. She was not engaging in the direct confrontation that Draxian combat philosophy demanded. Fight me properly, Valkyr hissed, his translator rendering the words with emotional intensity. Lisa did not respond. She stayed focused on her strategy. Sorkin's words from the day before echoed in her mind. Valkyr was more dangerous now because he had learned respect and discipline. But discipline could also mean rigidity. If he was following a plan, a strategy he had prepared, then forcing him to abandon that plan would create opportunities. At the 15-minute mark, Lisa changed her approach. Instead of purely defensive movement, she began to test Valkyr with quick strikes and feints. None of them were meant to be finishing techniques. They were designed to make him react, to force him to burn energy defending against attacks that never fully committed. Valkyr adapted, but adaptation required energy and thought. The exchanges became faster and more complex. They grappled and broke apart, struck and defended, circled and closed distance dozens of times. Lisa took hits that made her ribs ache and her muscles scream. Valkyr landed solid strikes that would have felled a lesser opponent, but Lisa stayed on her feet. Every time Valkyr thought he had secured a dominant position, she found a way to slip free or reverse the control. She was not stronger than him, but she was proving that strength was not the only factor that mattered. At 20 minutes, Lisa noticed the change. Valkyr's breathing had become heavier. His movements, while still powerful, had lost a fraction of their speed. The explosive burst that gave Draxians their advantage was fading. They were entering the territory where human endurance became the equalizer. Lisa pressed forward, attacking with combinations that forced Valkyr to defend continuously. She was tired too, exhausted in ways that would make tomorrow agonizing, but she could feel that she had more left in her. The medical bay kept both fighters for observation for 6 hours after the fight. Lisa lay on a bed with monitoring equipment attached to her body, cataloging every bruise, strained muscle, and minor injury. The doctor, Kelly Price, worked with quiet efficiency, applying treatments and pain management while occasionally shaking her head at the damage. 3 cracked ribs, extensive bruising across your torso and arms, strained ligaments in your left shoulder, and a mild concussion, Kelly listed off as she worked. You're going to be miserable for at least a week. But nothing permanent? Lisa asked, wincing as Kelly applied a healing compound to her ribs. Nothing permanent. You're young and healthy and you'll heal. But Monroe? That was one of the most brutal fights I've seen in 20 years of military medicine. You pushed yourself and that Draxian to the absolute limit. Through the partially open door, Lisa could see into the adjacent treatment room where Valkyr was receiving similar care from Draxian medical staff. He looked as battered as she felt, his bronze scales showing darker patches where he had taken damage, his movements slow and careful. Sergeant Jake arrived an hour later, carrying a data pad and wearing an expression that mixed pride with concern. He pulled up a chair next to Lisa's bed and sat down heavily. Commander Seth wants a full report, but that can wait until you're recovered. Right now, I'm here to tell you that what you did out there has changed everything. Jake pulled up footage on his data pad. The fight has been sent to Coalition Command. Representatives from 7 different species have already submitted formal requests for access to human combat training methodology. They want to learn from us? Lisa asked, surprised. They want to understand how you won. The footage shows a fighter half the size of her opponent with less strength, less speed, and less combat experience outlasting and defeating a warrior from one of the galaxy's most feared military species. The aliens are asking questions they should have asked when humanity first joined the Coalition. Jake showed her clips from the fight, analyzing key moments. This exchange at 12 minutes where you redirected his attack and created space. This was textbook economy of movement. You used exactly enough energy to defend while he burned himself out attacking. And here at 23 minutes you took a body shot that should have dropped you, but you clinched and recovered. That's not technique. That's pure will. Lisa watched herself on the screen, seeing the fight from an outside perspective for the first time. She looked small and vulnerable compared to Valkyr, and yet she had never stopped moving, never stopped adapting, never given up even when the logical choice would have been to submit and end the suffering. What about Valkyr? She asked. How is he taking the loss? Better than you might expect. I spoke with Sorkin, his instructor. Apparently this outcome was not what Valkyr wanted, but it was what he needed. The first time you beat him, it wounded his pride. This time he gave everything he had and still lost. That's not shameful in Draxian culture. That's honorable. The door opened and Commander Seth entered with several other officers, including 2 Lisa didn't recognize. They wore the insignia of Coalition Command, the central military authority that coordinated forces from all member species. Cadet Monroe, one of the new officers said, a Tellian female with gray skin and sharp, intelligent eyes. I am Commander Shallot from Coalition Training Command. I watched your fight with great interest. What you demonstrated today has implications beyond this ship. Ma'am? Lisa tried to sit up straighter but winced at the pain in her ribs. Stay comfortable, Cadet. You've earned it. Shallot moved closer, her 4 hands gesturing as she spoke. For decades, humanity has been part of the Coalition, but always in support roles. Diplomacy, technology, research. Your people were not considered warrior material. Today you proved otherwise. One fight doesn't prove anything, ma'am. It just means I got lucky. Luck? Shallot made a sound that her translator rendered as amused. I have reviewed every second of that fight. You were systematically dismantling your opponent through superior strategy, endurance, and technique. That is not luck. That is skill applied under extreme pressure. The second Coalition officer, this one from a species Lisa didn't recognize with crystalline features that refracted light, spoke in a voice like chimes. The question now becomes, how do we integrate this human approach to combat into our existing training frameworks? And how do we help the other species understand what makes your people effective warriors? Commander Seth stepped forward. If I may, sirs, I believe Cadet Monroe needs rest before we discuss policy implications. Of course, Shallot agreed. We will speak more once you have recovered, Cadet. For now, know that you have done your species a great service today. After they left, Lisa finally allowed herself to relax. The pain medication was making her drowsy, and the emotional weight of the day was catching up with her. She drifted in and out of sleep, vaguely aware of nurses checking her vitals and adjusting her treatments. When she woke several hours later, the medical bay was quieter. Most of the treatment beds were empty. But in the adjacent room, she saw Valkyr sitting up on his bed, staring at his hands. He looked lost in thought, his amber eyes distant. Lisa made a decision. Against the protests of her body, she got out of bed and walked carefully to the doorway of Valkyr's room. He looked up at her approach, surprise crossing his reptilian features. May I come in? She asked. Valkyr was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. You may. Lisa entered and carefully lowered herself into a chair near his bed. They sat in awkward silence, two warriors who had just tried to break each other now sharing space with nothing but the hum of medical equipment between them. "I do not understand," Velkir finally said, his voice quiet. "I am stronger than you, faster. I have trained since childhood in the arts of combat. By every measure I should have won." "Maybe," Lisa said, "but combat isn't just about physical measurements. It's about adapting to circumstances, managing resources, and refusing to quit. Is this what makes humans different? This refusal to accept defeat? Part of it. We're not the best at anything, really. Not the strongest or fastest or smartest. But we're stubborn, we endure, and we learn." Lisa shifted in her chair, trying to find a position that didn't aggravate her injuries. "Can I ask you something?" "You may." "Why did you grab my hair in the first fight?" Velkir looked uncomfortable. It seemed like an advantage. In Draxian combat, any part of the opponent's body can be used for control. Hair is simply another grip point. I did not understand that humans view it differently. In our culture, especially in military settings, that kind of move is deeply disrespectful. It says you don't see your opponent as worthy of honorable combat. I see that now. Sorkin has explained this to me many times since that day. I was arrogant. I did not respect you or your species, and so I did not consider that your customs might matter. Velkir met her eyes. I apologize for that disrespect. It was unworthy of a warrior. Lisa was surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Apology accepted. And for what it's worth, you pushed me harder today than I've ever been pushed. If you had given up at any point in that fight, I don't know if I could have kept going. That is, unexpected to hear. It's the truth. You're an incredible fighter, Velkir. You just had to fight someone who approaches combat differently than what you're used to. They talked for another hour, carefully at first, then with growing ease. Lisa explained human combat philosophy, how Earth's history of warfare had shaped current fighting styles. Velkir shared insights into Draxian culture, helping her understand why honor and strength were so central to his people's identity. When the medical staff finally insisted that both patients needed rest, Lisa returned to her bed feeling like something significant had shifted. She had not just defeated an opponent. She had made a connection with someone from a completely different species and background. The next morning, despite the doctor's protests, Lisa insisted on being released. She was mobile, even if painfully so, and she wanted to return to normal routine as much as possible. As she walked through the corridors of the Valiant Dawn, she noticed that the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Alien cadets who had previously ignored her now nodded respectfully as she passed. Some even moved aside to let her through, a sign of deference that made her uncomfortable. She had not fought to establish dominance. She had fought to defend her honor and prove that humans deserved respect. In the dining hall, the seating arrangements had changed again. But this time, instead of species separating into isolated groups, there was more mixing. A human cadet sat with two Kresh engaged in animated conversation. A group of Tellians shared a table with humans, comparing notes on something displayed on a data pad. Amy found Lisa at their usual table and sat down with concern evident on her face. "You look terrible. Should you even be up?" "Probably not. But I'm not going to hide in the medical bay." Lisa carefully lowered herself onto the bench. "What have I missed?" "Everything has changed. The aliens are looking at us differently now. There have been like 20 requests for joint training sessions with human instructors. The Draxian commander even submitted a formal proposal to exchange combat training protocols." Amy leaned forward. 2 weeks after the fight, Lisa stood in a training hall watching Velkir demonstrate a Draxian technique to a mixed group of human and alien cadets. Her ribs had healed enough that she could move without constant pain, though she still felt twinges when she twisted wrong. Velkir moved with his usual grace, though she noticed he favored his left side slightly. The training hall had changed since that first day when everything began. Now, instead of species training separately with occasional mixed sessions, the default was integration. Humans worked alongside Draxians, Tellians partnered with Kresh, and every session included representatives from multiple species learning from each other. The key to this technique, Velkir explained through his translator, is timing the explosive movement with your opponent's commitment to their attack. If you move too early, they can adjust. Too late and the opportunity passes. A human cadet named Chris Parker raised his hand. How do you generate that much power without telegraphing your intention? Through practice and body control. Draxian warriors train for years to hide their movements until the moment of execution, but I have learned from Cadet Monroe that there are other approaches. Velkir gestured to Lisa. Would you demonstrate the human equivalent? Lisa stepped onto the mat, still a bit surprised that Velkir had become so comfortable acknowledging her skills. 2 weeks ago he would rather have died than ask a human for help. Now he requested her input regularly. Humans approach this differently, Lisa said, addressing the group. We don't try to match the explosive power of species like the Draxians. Instead, we use economy of movement and timing. Chris, attack me like you mean it. Chris hesitated. Are you sure? You're still recovering. I'm sure. Come on. Chris moved forward with a committed strike. Lisa didn't try to block the force directly. Instead, she stepped off the line of attack at the last possible moment, redirecting his momentum with minimal effort. Chris stumbled past her off balance and Lisa could have easily capitalized on the opening, but instead just reset to starting position. See the difference? Lisa said to the watching cadets. Velkir generates power to overwhelm the opponent's defense. I avoid the collision entirely and create opportunity from my opponent's committed energy. Neither approach is better. They're just different. A Kresh cadet clicked its mandibles, and what Lisa had learned was a gesture of understanding. This explains much about human tactics in general. You do not seek to overpower. You seek to outlast and adapt. Exactly, Sergeant Jake called from where he was supervising another group. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. That mentality is built into how we approach everything, including combat. The training session continued with cadets from different species attempting techniques from various traditions. Some combinations worked well, others failed spectacularly. But everyone was learning, and that was the point. The rigid separation that had existed before was dissolving, replaced by genuine curiosity and cooperation. After the session, Velkir and Lisa walked together toward the dining hall. Over the past 2 weeks, they had formed an unexpected friendship built on mutual respect and shared experience. The Draxian warrior had proven to be intelligent and thoughtful beneath his initial arrogance, while Lisa had discovered that understanding alien perspectives made her a better fighter in person. I received communication from my homeworld yesterday, Velkir said as they walked. My clan wishes to know about the human who defeated me twice. What did you tell them? The truth. That I underestimated an opponent and paid the price for my arrogance. That I learned more from defeat than I had learned from any victory. Velkir paused outside the dining hall entrance. My people are curious about humans now. Some view your species with suspicion, others with respect. But none can ignore you anymore. Inside the dining hall, the transformation was even more evident. The tables that had once been segregated by species now showed deliberate mixing. Lisa and Velkir joined a table where Amy Torres was sitting with 2 Tellian engineers and a Draxian cadet from Velkir's unit. We were just discussing the upcoming joint exercise, Amy said as they sat down. Command is planning a large-scale training operation that will involve mixed-species teams. One of the Tellians, whose name Lisa had learned was Kelvan, gestured with 2 of his hands. This is unprecedented. Normally, each species trains separately and coordinates only at the command level. This exercise will require actual integration at the squad level. It makes sense, Lisa said, eating carefully around her still tender ribs. In real combat situations, coalition forces will need to work together seamlessly. We can't do that if we only train with our own species. There is resistance, the other Draxian cadet said. His name was Torval, and he was one of Velkir's closest companions. Many warriors believe that mixing training dilutes the purity of combat traditions. Traditions that don't adapt become obsolete, Velkir said, surprising everyone at the table with his bluntness. I learned this truth the hard way. Our traditions are valuable, but so are the traditions of other species. A warrior who cannot learn is a warrior who will eventually fail. The conversation shifted to speculation about the joint exercise, what challenges it might present, and how different species' strengths could complement each other. Lisa listened more than she spoke, noting how easily these cadets who had barely acknowledged each other a month ago now collaborated and planned together. Later that afternoon, Lisa was summoned to Commander Seth's office. When she arrived, she found not just the commander but also Colonel Patricia Hughes from Earth's Coalition Liaison Division. The colonel was a severe-looking woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Cadet Monroe," Colonel Hughes said without preamble, "I've been reviewing the reports from this facility with great interest. Your actions have caused quite a stir at Coalition Command. I was just defending my honor, ma'am. And in doing so, you've fundamentally changed how the Coalition views humanity's military capabilities. That has strategic implications." Hughes pulled up a holographic display showing various documents and reports. 7 species have requested access to human combat training programs. 3 have proposed joint military exercises, and Coalition Command is seriously considering a proposal to establish mixed species special operations units. That's significant, ma'am. It's revolutionary. For 40 years, humanity has been treated as the junior partner in the Coalition. We provided technology and diplomacy, while the warrior species handled security. That dynamic is shifting, and you're at the center of it. Hughes fixed Lisa with an intense stare. "How do you feel about that responsibility?" Lisa thought carefully before answering. "Honestly, ma'am, it's overwhelming. I never wanted to be a symbol or a representative. I just wanted to serve and prove myself as an individual. Unfortunately, you don't get to choose that anymore. Whether you like it or not, you've become important to humanity's standing in the galaxy." Hughes' expression softened slightly. "But I'm not here to pressure you into something you're not ready for. I'm here to offer you an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" Commander Seth spoke up. "Colonel Hughes is assembling a pilot program for the first mixed species combat unit. She wants you to be part of it." "Me? Ma'am, I'm still a cadet. There are far more experienced personnel who would be better suited." "Experience is valuable, but adaptability is essential," Hughes said. "This unit will need people who can bridge cultural gaps, who can work with species that think and fight completely differently. Your friendship with Velkir demonstrates exactly that capability." Lisa felt the weight of the offer. This was what she had worked for, a chance to serve at the highest level. But it also meant stepping even further into the spotlight, becoming even more of a symbol for humanity's military capabilities. "Can I have time to think about it, ma'am?" "You have 48 hours. Then I need an answer." Hughes stood. "One more thing, Monroe. Don't underestimate the importance of what you've accomplished. You didn't just win 2 fights. You changed minds across the galaxy. That's worth more than any tactical victory." After the colonel left, Commander Seth gestured for Lisa to sit. "This is a big decision. Do you want my advice?" "Please, sir, take the assignment. Not because it's prestigious or because it'll advance your career, but because you have a genuine talent for this. You see past species differences to the individual underneath. That's rare, and it's exactly what the Coalition needs right now." Seth leaned back in his chair. "Besides, you've already proven you can handle the pressure." Lisa left the office with her mind churning. She needed to talk to someone who would give her honest perspective, someone who knew her well enough to cut through the confusion. She found Amy in their quarters, working on some engineering project at her desk. "I need your opinion," Lisa said, closing the door behind her. Amy turned around. "Sounds serious." "What's up?" Lisa explained the offer, the mixed species unit, and her uncertainty about accepting. Amy listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. "Here's what I think," Amy said when Lisa finished. "You're scared because this is bigger than anything you've imagined. But you're also the right person for it. I've watched you over the past 2 weeks. You turned in..." 6 months had passed since the fight that changed everything. Lisa Monroe stood in a briefing room aboard Coalition Station Prime, the massive orbital facility that served as headquarters for the Coalition Defense Forces. The room was filled with personnel from 8 different species, all wearing the new insignia of the Integrated Combat Division, the first truly mixed species military unit in Coalition history. She was no longer a cadet. The accelerated training program and her demonstrated abilities had earned her the rank of lieutenant junior grade. It still felt strange to see the rank insignia on her uniform, to be saluted by personnel as she walked through the corridors. But she had learned to accept the responsibility that came with her new position. Beside her stood Velkir, also promoted to lieutenant status in the Draxian military structure. His presence at her side had become so familiar that she sometimes forgot how unusual their partnership was. A human and a Draxian, working together as equals. had become the symbol of what the Integrated Combat Division represented. Colonel Hughes stood at the front of the room, pulling up displays on the holographic projector. Today's briefing covers the progress of the integration program across all Coalition facilities. As you know, the pilot program we started on the Valiant Dawn has been expanded to 17 training centers across Coalition space. The display showed statistics and reports from various facilities. Success rates, incident reports, cultural conflict resolutions, and combat effectiveness measurements. The data painted a picture of significant progress mixed with predictable challenges. The resistance has been stronger than we anticipated in some quarters, Hughes continued. Traditional warrior cultures, particularly among the Draxians and the Korgath, have been slow to accept the integration model. However, demonstration units like yours have been instrumental in changing minds. A Tellian officer named Kelvon raised 2 of his 4 hands. What about the recent incident at Training Station Gamma? I heard there was a significant altercation between species. There was. A Korgath instructor refused to train with human personnel, claiming it violated his cultural honor code. The situation was resolved when Lieutenant Monroe and Lieutenant Velkir visited the facility and provided a demonstration of integrated combat techniques. Hughes looked at Lisa. Would you care to explain what happened? Lisa stood, still not entirely comfortable with public speaking, but much better at it than she had been 6 months ago. The Korgath instructor believed that humans were too weak to be worth training with. We offered to demonstrate otherwise. After a supervised sparring session between myself and one of his top students, he reconsidered his position. You mean you beat his student? Amy Torres said from across the room with a grin. She had also been assigned to the Integrated Combat Division, working in the engineering section that was developing equipment suitable for mixed species use. I mean, we had a productive training exchange, Lisa corrected, though she couldn't help smiling slightly. The point wasn't to prove superiority. It was to demonstrate that different approaches to combat can all be valid and effective. Velkir stood as well. The Korgath instructor now regularly requests human personnel for his advanced training programs. He has stated that working with humans has improved his understanding of strategy and endurance-based combat. Colonel Hughes nodded. This is the pattern we're seeing across the board. Initial resistance followed by gradual acceptance once species actually work together. The question is how to accelerate this process without forcing cooperation before species are ready for it. The briefing continued for another hour, covering logistics, training schedules, and upcoming joint operations. When it finally concluded, Lisa and Velkir walked together through the massive corridors of Coalition Station Prime. The station was enormous, home to over 50,000 personnel from dozens of species. It represented the Coalition at its best, a place where different civilizations worked together toward common goals. I received a message from Sorken this morning, Velkir said as they walked. He wished to inform me that he is retiring from active instruction. Is he all right? Lisa asked with concern. She had grown fond of the old Draxian instructor. He as well, but he believes his time as a teacher has passed. He says the new generation of instructors understands things he is still learning. Velkir paused outside a viewport showing the blue-green planet below. He mentioned you specifically in his message. He said that teaching you was one of his greatest failures. Failures? But he never taught me. He only warned me before the rematch. Precisely. He said that if he had been truly wise, he would have taught you Draxian combat techniques directly, creating a bridge between our species much earlier. Instead, he left you to figure things out on your own. He views this as a missed opportunity. Lisa looked out at the planet, thinking about the old instructor who had shown her kindness when he had no obligation to do so. Tell him that he taught me something more important than techniques. He taught me that bridges between species can be built by anyone willing to try. They continued their walk, eventually reaching the training facilities section of the station. Here, the real work of integration was happening. Humans trained alongside Draxians, Tellians, Kresh, and species from across the Coalition. The sound of combat instruction being shouted in multiple languages, and the occasional grunt of pain or triumph filled the air. Lisa had a training session scheduled with a group of new recruits who had just arrived at the station. These were personnel who had heard about the Integrated Combat Division and requested assignment to it. Some were motivated by genuine belief in the program. Others were curious. A few probably just wanted to test themselves against the famous human who had beaten a Draxian warrior. The group assembled in one of the larger training halls, 15 recruits from 6 different species. They watched Lisa and Velkir with varying degrees of curiosity, skepticism, and respect. This was always the challenging part. Earning the trust of personnel who had spent their entire lives believing their species' way of doing things was the only valid approach. "Welcome to Integrated Combat Training," Lisa began, her voice carrying across the hall. "I'm Lieutenant Monroe, and this is Lieutenant Velkir. We're going to teach you how to work with species that think, move, and fight completely differently than you do. Some of you will find this easy. Others will struggle. Everyone will learn something valuable if they approach this with an open mind." A Korgath recruit, massive even by his species standards, stepped forward. "I have heard stories about you, human. They say you defeated a Draxian through trickery and deception. This does not impress me. A true warrior wins through strength and honor." Lisa had dealt with this attitude many times over the past months. She no longer felt defensive or angry about it. Instead, she saw it as an opportunity for education. "What's your name?" she asked the Korgath. "I am called Gornak. I have fought in 12 campaigns and earned my status through blood and victory." "Then you're a proven warrior, Gornak. That's good. It means you'll understand what I'm about to show you." Lisa moved to the center of the training mat. "Attack me. Use whatever technique you prefer. Try to win." Gornak looked at Velkir as if asking permission. The Draxian simply gestured for him to proceed. "I do not wish to injure you, human. You are small and fragile. I appreciate the concern, but I'll be fine. Now attack me, or admit you're afraid to." The challenge to his courage made Gornak's decision immediate. He charged forward with the overwhelming aggression typical of his species. He was larger than Velkir, easily twice Lisa's mass, and moved with surprising speed for his size. Lisa didn't try to meet his charge head-on. That would have been suicide. Instead, she used every principle she had learned over the past months of constant training and teaching. She redirected his momentum, used his own strength against him, and maintained perfect control over her movements, even as Gornak tried to overpower her. The exchange lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, Gornak was on the mat with Lisa, controlling one of his arms in a joint lock that caused pain without injury. The other recruits watched in stunned silence. "Do you yield?" Lisa asked, her voice calm. "I yield," Gornak admitted, his translator rendering his tone as shocked. Lisa released the hold immediately and helped him to his feet. "You're strong, fast, and aggressive. Those are valuable qualities. But they're not the only qualities that matter in combat. If you can learn to combine your natural advantages with strategy and technique, you'll be even more dangerous than you are now." Gornak touched his arm where she had controlled it, testing for injury and finding none. How did a human develop such skill? Through the same way any warrior develops skill: training, failure, learning from mistakes, and refusing to quit even when things are hard. Lisa addressed the entire group now. That's what this program is about. Not proving one species is better than another, but learning how different species can make each other stronger. Velkir stepped forward. "Lieutenant Monroe and I were enemies before we were colleagues. She defeated me twice in combat. The first time my arrogance made me weak. The second time my determination was not enough to overcome her superior strategy and endurance. These defeats taught me more than any victory ever had.